The sun hung low in the sky, its light spilling gently over a small village where life was measured not in dreams but in daily survival. Amid the dusty lanes and crooked mud houses, there lived a boy named Arif. He was 10 years old, thin as a reed, with big brown eyes that always seemed to search for something beyond the world he was born into. Arif's family was poor, so poor that even a loaf of bread was considered a blessing. His father, a farm laborer, toiled from dawn till dusk for a handful of coins, while his mother scrubbed clothes for wealthy families, her hands rough and cracked. The family's tiny house had no electricity, no furniture, no books, only hope, which flickered weakly like the small kerosene lamp they lit at night. But Arif was different. Unlike the other children in the village, who accepted their fates, Arif dreamed. His dream wasn't of riches, nor of toys, nor even of food. It was of something less tangible and far more powerful, knowledge. Every morning, Arif would watch children pass by his house on their way to school. They walked in neat lines, their uniforms washed and pressed, books clutched tightly to their chests as though they carried treasures. To Arif, those books were treasures. He imagined them filled with secret stories, numbers, maps to unseen worlds. But all he could do was watch. His family could not afford school fees, let alone books or uniforms. And yet, every day, when his chores were finished, Arif drifted toward the school. He would sit quietly under the shade of a tree outside its boundary wall, peeking through the bars of the iron gate. The sound of chalk on a blackboard, the recitation of lessons, the laughter of children, all of it filled him with longing. One afternoon, after the school bell rang and children poured out into the street, Arif noticed a torn notebook page lying on the ground. It was smudged with dirt, covered in numbers he did not understand. But to him, it was as precious as gold. He bent down, picked it up carefully, and folded it into his pocket. That night, under the flickering flame of the lamp, he stared at the page until his eyes closed in exhaustion. That single scrap of paper became the beginning of his secret collection. Over the next weeks, Arif gathered broken pencils, discarded pages, and half-used notebooks that other children threw away. He stacked them neatly under his bed, calling them his library. To anyone else, it was garbage. To him, it was a universe. But no matter how many scraps he collected, he still couldn't read a single word. He needed a key, someone to unlock the world for him. Fate answered one hot afternoon. Arif stood by the school gate as usual, watching the children through the bars. His face was pressed against the iron, his eyes wide with curiosity. Inside the courtyard, a teacher noticed him. Her name was Miss Rahman, a kind woman with gentle eyes. She had seen Arif before, always standing outside, always watching silently. That day, she decided to walk toward him. "Why do you stand here every day, child?" she asked softly. Arif's heart pounded. He had never spoken to a teacher before. He looked down, embarrassed. I like to see the books," he whispered. Miss Rahman tilted her head, studying him. His clothes were torn, his sandals worn out, but his eyes shone with something rare, hunger, not for food, but for learning. "Do you go to school?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, madam. My father says we cannot afford." There was a long pause. Then, slowly, Miss Rahman reached into her bag. She pulled out a small, unused notebook. Its cover was plain, its pages crisp and clean. She held it out to him. Arif stared at the notebook as if it were a miracle. His small hands trembled as he accepted it. He ran his fingers over the cover, hardly believing it was real. "Madam," he whispered, his voice breaking, "is this, for me?" "Yes," she said, smiling warmly. "It is yours. Remember, every great journey begins with a single step. This can be your first." Tears welled in Arif's eyes. That simple act, the gift of a notebook, was the spark that lit a fire inside him. A fire ignited. That night, Arif could not sleep. He held the notebook close, turning its pages over and over. The paper smelled of promise. He pressed his cheek against it, as if afraid it might vanish. But then a painful thought struck him: what good was a notebook if he could not write in it? His heart sank. Yet, he refused to give up. He sharpened one of his found pencils and, with trembling hands, copied the few numbers he had seen on the torn page. They were clumsy shapes, uneven and shaky, but they were his first steps into a new world. Every day, he practiced. When other children played, he traced numbers and letters in the dust. When the village slept, he studied under the dim light of the lamp. His hunger for knowledge grew stronger than his hunger for food. His parents noticed. At first, his father frowned. "Books will not fill your stomach," he said sternly. "Work with me in the fields." But Arif's mother saw the fire in her son's eyes. "Let him dream," she whispered to her husband. "Perhaps one day, his books will bring more than food." The path was not easy. Without guidance, Arif often grew frustrated. Letters danced before his eyes, refusing to make sense. Sometimes he cried quietly, clutching his notebook, fearing he was too foolish to learn. But every time despair threatened to crush him, he remembered Miss Ramon's words: "Every great journey begins with a single step." And so, he kept stepping. Days turned into months. Slowly, painfully, he began.